Welcome at our MusEcology platform, a visualization tool to depict cultural and natural interrelations, all at the example of musical instruments that are, through their materials, deeply connected to nature. The MusEcology platform allows to discover the interrelations through 4 different views: the orchestra view, the material view, the timeline view, and the diversity and thread map. All views are interconnected and every selection is transferred to the other views. The legend or central panel allows to take a tour to get a short explanation on the functioning of musicology. Left of it, it is possible to switch the color scheme of the whole tool to a color-friendly mode if needed. However, the heart of the central panel and of the tool is the central thread donut connecting all different views. The thread donut is also shown within the orchestra view and within the diversity and thread map, always grouping a certain number of species used for musical instruments and their corresponding trade-related or ecological species threads. The thread category refers to the red list of threatened species of the International Union of Conservation of Nature, IUCN, and the collected assessments for each species from the Botanic Gardens Conservation International, BGCI, in their thread search tool. Both categorize species regarding their ecological threat status. The threat category in which a species gets listed is the result of an extended scientific assessment regarding the ecological threat situation of the corresponding species. As the musical instruments depend to a certain degree of these species, the species threat can in the long term also result in a threat for musical instrument makers and musicians. The moment musicians and musical instrument makers notice and feel the gravity of the situation of a species is when species get listed in CITES and trade becomes regulated. CITES refers to the Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species and lists species whose survival might be threatened due to the species trade. The degree of regulation and threat to the species is reflected in the 3 appendix categories of CITES, as the consequences for musicians and instrument makers also pose a threat on them. It can be considered as a trade-related threat to the species and to music cultures. The color legend is based on a traffic light assignment to the different categories, red being extinct or with the strictest regulation listed in Appendix 1, and green reflects being categorized as not threatened. Yellow and orange are categories in between, which represents that the species are possibly threatened or are listed either in Appendix 3 or Appendix 2. For faster and specific search, the legend has 2 search bars, one to search for a certain species or genus, and the other to search for a certain geographic region, such as for a country, a biome, or an ecoregion, depending on what map layer is selected in the diversity and thread map. The orchestra view is hierarchically structured in underlying instrument groups, musical instruments, and musical instrument parts. The material view is also hierarchically structured based on the taxonomic categories of kingdom, dividing plants and animal species, families, genus, and species. The timeline view allows to explore the historical placement of threat and trade-related categorization for each species and their development to set the time for other visualizations through interactions. Another key element is the divided thread icon, either a tree or a paw, that is found on species level in the material and timeline view. The left side represents the trade-related threat, while the right side represents the ecological threat. This allows to identify both threat aspects on one side. Finally, through the diversity map and thread map, it is possible to relate materials and species used for orchestral instruments to their location of origin. Equipped with a semantic zoom, a thread donut is indicating per geographical areas the number of species threatened or trade regulated per category. The diversity and thread map allows to choose in the upper right corner between different map layers, such as countries, ecoregions, and hexagons. As an extra, the ecoregion protection potential or orchestras worldwide can be visualized.